When planting a tree, the most important thing to do is dig the correct size hole. In order to determine the size of the hole, you have to measure the root ball. The width of the root ball determines the width of the hole. You need to go 3 times as wide as the root ball and the width of the hole. That gives the plant plenty of room for the roots to get into. The depth of the root ball is a different matter. In order to determine the correct depth, you have to find the root flare on the tree, because that needs to be at ground level. Once you determine that, then you can determine the depth of the hole that you're going to plant. When you bring your tree home, you're going to have burlap, string, wire basket on the root ball, and what you need to do to determine the root flare is to actually remove the string, remove the burlap, and at the bottom of this tree it should actually show you a widening where the root actually is attached to the trunk just below the surface. You may even see just the beginning of the top of the root. This tree is at a proper level so that you can measure from here to the bottom of the root ball, and you will know how deep to dig your hole. If, when you pull back the burlap and it looks like basically the tree is a telephone pole stuck in the ground and there doesn't seem to be a widening, you need to excavate down and try to find where that flare is. And once you find it, you actually have to remove the entire top of the root ball down to that flare. And that becomes the top of your root ball. Then the depth of the hole wants to be from this point to the bottom of the ball, not from where the top of the ball was originally. So I measured my root ball. It was about 22 to 24 inches wide, and it was only about 12.5 to 13 inches deep. I've dug my hole roughly 5.5 feet. That's about the minimum that we would want, but it's only 12 inches deep. The reason that I've gone a little bit shallow is because that root ball weighs about 250 pounds. It actually is going to settle a little bit in the ground. I do not want loose soil underneath it. It would sink too low. So we only want to dig the depth of the root ball, or just slightly less than the root ball, and then we're going to take off the excess soil off the top of that ball, and we're going to bring that plant into the hole. There are some people who believe that that wire basket should be taken off in its entirety at this point in time before the plant is placed into the hole. I disagree with that for one major reason. We can now use these handles to lift this plant, set it in that hole, and the root system of that plant is not disturbed. One of the reasons we have such a large hole is for the root system to be able to have nice loose stuff to go into. But the other advantage to that is that plant's going to be in the center of the hole. Now we've got plenty of room around that tree that we can then cut that wire basket off and remove it once it's in the hole and the root system is still intact. At this point, it's in the hole, the root system is still intact. Really, the most important thing to do is to make sure that the depth is correct and also that the tree is as straight as you need it to be. Judging on whether or not it's a windy location, you may have to stake it afterwards, but don't worry about that right now. Just get the tree as straight as possible. Make sure the depth is correct, and the depth is absolutely perfect for this right now. We just kind of put a little soil underneath it, pack it in, and that tree is basically left as straight as it needs to be. Now we're ready to partially fill in so it's sturdy, and then we will remove the wire basket and the exposed burlap. The question now arises, what do you backfill around that root ball with? Our recommendation is always to use as good a soil as you have on site, because the tree wants to be able to get through that and then into the area you didn't dig and didn't excavate, and it has to be somewhat similar. So most of the soil you took out of the hole wants to go back into the hole. We do, however, recommend not allowing the plant to go hungry and don't allow it to go thirsty. So You actually mix in some compost material. We happen to have one type here. It's Coast of Maine. It's an excellent Maine product. It actually is peat moss mixed with shellfish and blueberry compost, and it is everything you basically need to mix with your soil in order to have a very healthy plant. We also recommend the use of mycorrhizae fungi, and actually mycorrhizae means plant and root association. These spores that are within this product, and there is also a 2-2-2 balanced fertilizer, so the plant does get some food, but the mycorrhizae actually attaches to the root of the plant, and part of it enters the root and part of it enters the soil, and it actually pulls water into the root system without the plant expending any energy to do so. So it's a very, very good benefit for the plant. It essentially doubles to triples the amount of water absorbing capacity the root system has without the plant expending any energy. It's an excellent product to use. We highly recommend that you use this in your backfill as well. Now that the tree is in the hole, it's at the right level, it seems to be straight, and you have your backfill soil mixed and ready, partially fill in that root ball. Put about half of the soil back in to solidify the root ball so the tree doesn't move. When you've got just about 3 inches left to backfill, you want to stop. And this is when you want to apply the first amount of water. The reason we want to do this is because the soil is loose, very fluffy. By adding water now, it sinks down to the bottom of that root zone and fills up the entire backfill area. So now, instead of just a root mass that is moist, we have a 6-foot wide reservoir for this plant to pull water out for the rest of the week. There's a couple of very important things this water is doing. First of all, as it soaks through the soil, it's taking all those loose particles and basically cementing them against the root mass and against the edge of the backfill, so that when these roots get out here, there are no air pockets, which means this tree won't sink any further than it already is. It's just about perfectly setting where it is. The other thing that it does, as I mentioned, is it gets the entire reservoir moist from bottom to top, from root ball to outside. This is very important for this tree because rather than just putting a sprinkler on this plant and watering it a couple of minutes a day, you can now let this plant get its roots into the backfill and use that backfill moisture for as much as a week. And then when you water again, you water fully and deeply so that that entire reservoir is again moist for that plant. So you want to remember, in watering a new planting, water weekly, deeply. So when you're watering it this time, how much water do you put on? Well, the site will tell you, because what you want to do is fill this entire area up so that it looks like a moat around the root ball. Let that drain completely and then refill it a second time. At that point, then you finish your backfill. So once the backfill is complete, simply take a rake and kind of smooth out the entire area so that it looks like the tree belongs in its site. It gives it a nice finished look, it levels it off. You basically allow it to find its own level. The root system itself may be a little bit high because we had a 13-inch root ball. We put it in a 12-inch deep hole. It's a little bit higher right in the center because we do know it's going to sink just a little bit, and it will find its own level and level out in time. And then basically at this point, because we want to be able to encourage watering in the future, at this point we want to make that dike or rill around the entire planting site to hold water for next time. So you're basically complete. You've made the dike so that we have a water reservoir for you for the future. If you want to at this point in time, you can finish this off by filling the inside of the dike with bark mulch. Because bark mulch is porous, the water will actually seep through it and still go inside and seep through, and it'll give it a finished look. Otherwise, you're done. So in summation, the important parts is find the root flare, make sure that that's showing at or above ground level, make sure you have plenty of width, add some organic matter and mycorrhizae to the backfill, and water, water, water. Follow these easy directions, you'll have a successful planting. Happy planting.